Okay, so I made a video on just basically how I mastered this track here. And I want to kind of just explain a little bit more of what's going on, because I was watching it back and I realized that, I was doing a lot more than I was talking about it. And so I was like making a lot of adjustments and then never made any commentary on why I was making the adjustments. So I wanted to just kind of hop in here and just show you what all I actually did to make this track as loud as I possibly could, as well as making sure it sounds up to par with every other dubstep producer out there. So this is just going to be a lot more of a deep dive on my specific master on this track. I wanted to preface by saying that the mixdown is going to heavily dictate what the master looks like. If you have, and what took me a really long time to actually like figure out coming into production, is that your master cannot save your mixdown. If you have a shitty mixdown, the master is only going to accentuate the shitty mixdown. So you don't be making a track and then hoping that it's going to sound better loud. Like if your track sounds good quiet, it's going to sound good loud. If it sounds like shit quiet, you need to fix a lot of stuff before you jump into your master channel, and just your master chain. I also don't believe in like a long master chain. Regardless, I know that this video is like, this is a very big master chain. I understand that. Majority of the time, I literally have these two EQs and like maybe a glue compressor. Sometimes I just shove the shit out of my songs. But just kind of find what works with you and what fits your kind of vibe and your production style, as well as your music. But yeah, so I'm going to kind of just walk you through my specific master, and I'm going to just explain like why I made specific adjustments and why I did certain things on this. So if I take this off here, you can hear what this sounds like without the master and then with the master. And then we'll get into the drop here so I can kind of show you what the difference is with this. You can hear dramatically the difference between the master and off and on. So I'm going to just kind of show you what I was doing here. And then I'll also kind of just walk you through kind of this couple of decisions that I made while I was listening to reference tracks. So the very first thing that I have on my master channel is the utility here. I have all my groups set to -15. I'm not gonna lie. There was a company live stream from years ago that I watched, and he had his set to -15, and then utility boosting them -15 or +15, and so, and his explanation was just basically that I can push this channel however much I want to, which logically that makes sense. In practice, with how I produce, I have never actually touched the volume on my groups ever. Unless it's the drums, I've collectively compressed all of the drums and then pushed the channel. That's like literally the only time I'll ever touch this. So I don't actually do anything with pushing the actual group channel up. So it's just a decision that I made that doesn't make any sense. But what I will say is I do keep the bass on mono, and I keep anything under 100 hertz mono, just so I don't get any phasing or anything like that with my kicks or sub bass. And then this, I am just automating the mid side to allow some space to be made before the drops hit. This was this project only kind of thing that I did. I just felt like the vocal itself had too much space, so I used the mid side to decrease the amount of space going into the drop, so the drop sounded more full on the sides, and just pulled all of the vocal more into the middle. This suspension, this is what I have on every single one of my songs. This is basically kind of like a build-up enhancer-ish. So as this turns up, the EQ goes down on the low end and on the high end, kind of making it more center. I also have the width pull down quite a bit, so it becomes a lot more mono as the buildup comes into the final stages. And then I have a reverb that this is adjusting the mix. And so it's getting reverbed out, it's getting a little bit tighter in width, and then the highs and the lows are getting pulled out a little bit. I do this mainly to make sure that my drops hit, and this just makes sure that there's enough space so I can kind of pull, like monitor the space, pull everything in, and then the drop can explode. But yeah, so that's on every single one of my masters. Moving into the actual master of what is actually editing the sound here, we have this EQ. Well, we have two EQs here. One set to side, the other one's set to mid. The side EQ, it's pulling out the low end of the sides because you don't need low end on the sides unless for some reason you do. I don't know why you'd ever need low end on the sides, but yeah, pulling out the low end on the sides there. And then this is boosting the high end frequencies on the sides to just make sure that you get more of those frequencies around your head versus directly in the middle. And then we have the EQ here. This is actually not a mid, it's just a full EQ here, but this is going to be boosting the mids and the highs. Just doing ever so slight boosting here. I got these two EQs out of this kind of master rack, which I don't use because it kind of destroys my sound. It blows it out too much. But I like the easy EQs and what they were doing, so I left those there. We also have this multiband. This is the low. I don't know if this is actually a Ableton one or if this was because this was also in the rack there. But this is just tightening things. I don't actually really know what it's doing, but it sounds nice. And so I left it. And it doesn't really like fuck with anything. So I'm like, okay, cool. This EQ here is doing a lot for the overall mix. And if I play this here without it, so when I was listening to reference tracks, they are a lot more loud in the high end and a lot more sharp, and mine was very dull. And I can kind of tell you what I'm talking about here. So if I come down and I play like Gunshots by Company, for example. If you play my drop without that, it has a lot more high-end presence, and so I use this EQ to kind of match that. This specific point was just kind of at random. I was just dragging it around until it sounded close. I do have, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 different reference tracks for this. I think the like standard is 3-ish. I like to do 5 just so I can get like a full array of sounds, and then I can have mine kind of fit in the middle of all of them. Which is why the high end is not as sharp as Gunshots, because it the high end on everything else, this is just where it sat in like the middle of everything. But yeah, so I'm just using this EQ to just boost the high end. I have a lot of boost on this actually for it being on the master, but it sounded good, so I left it there. This glue compressor here is soft clipping everything, and I have a little bit of compression going on. So you can see the luff meter shooting up when this is off, and that's just because the soft clip is not on, so the peaks are coming through. I put on the soft clip here. I did a little bit of compression just to kind of tie everything together. Normally, my glue compressors look more like this, but for this specific project, it was too extreme, so I just turned it off just in case I would want to use it again. But I just came back doing a little bit of compression on the entire track here, just make sure everything kind of glues together just a little bit more, and just doing a little bit of makeup. But this soft clip here is almost on every single time I produce. Basically what this is doing, and why I put this on, is this is just cutting all of the peaks at 0. And so when you're moving into your limiters, you're coming in with an already limited signal pretty much. And if you look at it here, so the red is what's being limited, but this top peak here is what is coming in, and it's completely flat. And so I'm already boosting, it's already coming in with a pretty red signal, but it's clipped at 0. So there's nothing coming over the threshold of 0, no peaks or transients or anything like that. So I do that. I don't know if any of this is right. I just want to throw this out there. This is just the way I do this. But with the soft clipping, it's already coming in limited, so you don't get any like weird kind of dips or anything with the limiter. Because I know sometimes in my past experience, like limiting things, it will quiet specific peaks and stuff like that to make sure it limits. But like there's an audible volume difference between all of these. And so I do this to make sure that my limiter just limits everything, and I can start squeezing out as much sound as I possibly can out of the track, rather than having those uneven dips. So, I mean, most of my tracks I produce too are also coming over. They're coming in hot. They're like 7, 8 dB above 0. So this just chops everything, make sure it's all even, and then when the limiter kicks on, I'm being able to squeeze out everything that I can, rather than, again, getting those weird dips. But yeah, so I have that here. The Spectrum coming right after this glue compressor I use to kind of like, I use this to just look at my overall signal. I don't want this completely flat, but like a nice curve like this is good. The track that I had originally was dipping right about here. So I was losing a lot of the high end just because it was a lot of more of a bass focused production session, which I didn't really realize until I got to the mastering stage, which is why I have that EQ shelf boosting the high end just to make everything more level. But yeah, so this is just, I kind of look at this as monitoring, and then the Swiss Army luft meter, I just look at while I am producing, just to make sure that I am, like, it's not sitting at -16, because I find a lot of problems with producing quietly and then shoving it in later. That's a me thing though, that's a personal choice. It should, I don't know, this trips me up, so I just have to have it. Just so I can kind of gauge how loud my song is, and if there's like any fundamental problems with like the frequency range or anything like that, because the lufts are going to be like your perceived loudness. So I want that as loud as possible, but I don't want it too loud, because I could get this to positive if I really wanted to, but I cannot guarantee that the track's integrity would hold together. But yeah, so this limiter is just limiting the already like soft clipped peak coming in here. I have this set to -1 for the ceiling, and then the threshold, I just kind of start dragging this down until it sounds good. I'm also watching the left meter here, so like long, it's pretty good that we got -2.9. Like that's a pretty good range. This kind of changes. I grabbed this from Waves, and so far I love this. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this. I haven't played around with it too much, but I use the threshold here, setting the ceiling to -0.1. I did this just because I had a second limiter after this, and I kept that in mind because I don't want to be having the ceiling at 0 and then limiting another signal at 0. If I can set the ceiling to -0.1, that gives me just a little bit more room to squeeze out even more of the sound. And it does change. The meters do read louder when there's a second limiter as opposed to just leaving this at 0. So that's the reason I do that. I also have this upward compression here, and this is just kind of pushing the seal or the floor up a little bit, just kind of bringing down the volume peak in between the high and the low points of the song, which there really isn't any because this is a sausage of a song. Yeah, that's a pretty thick. So there's not really any dynamic stuff here, but just for the sake of it, I brought this up. It did change the sound a little bit. I feel like it brought up the bass a little bit more. But I don't really know what this does. I was just using my ears, and this is kind of the value that I liked where it was sitting. And then we have a second limiter, and this one is set to 0. Ableton has the built-in limiter. I've already kind of like said that, but if you don't know, Ableton has its built-in clipper. Anything over 0 automatically gets chopped by Ableton, so you could shove your song in at 14 dB over 0. It will get chopped at 0, and it will already be limited. So I don't do any of the science stuff with setting my ceiling and making sure I have a little bit of headroom. I just crush it because it sounds good, and I like the way it sounds. So yeah, but threshold, again, pulling this down, not a whole lot. This is just kind of where I like it at. And then the long. Oop, let's listen to this real quick. Okay, so I saw this hit -1.7. So if I go back to show you what I was doing with the limiter here, if the ceiling's at 0, -2.7 is our average for short, and -2.9 is our average for long. Now with the second limiter here, you can hear a slight volume difference, and it is like just pushing it. So this is why I just use a second limiter here. But yeah, and then I have a spectrum here. This is just analyzing if you look at, well, the peaks are kind of the same. I'm curious though if I just messed up the graph. Like if we take the base there, it's -3. Yeah. So it's coming out around -4-ish, -3.42, and it's going into all of the limiting at around -6. So it just these limiters definitely kind of glue the track together a little bit more. But yeah, so those were kind of all of the decisions that I made, and then this was utilities here to just check the bass coming out of everything and make sure it sounds good. But that is my master for this. A little bit more of a deep dive. If you did stick around to watch the whole production video, thank you. I appreciate it. I thought I was talking a lot. I didn't realize that how little I was actually talking when I was explaining everything. But if you'd like to see all of this in practice, if you have not watched the video, I do have a production video, just kind of showing you how I actually use this. And yeah, so I just wanted to make this a little bit more directional. But yeah, hope this was helpful for you. Again, I just wanted to preface, this chain is specifically for this track. If you take everything that I did here and you copy everything down, you put it on your track, it sounds like shit. It's because this chain was not built for your track. It was built for this track. But this is just kind of like my thought, my intention behind everything. And yeah, just experiment, see what you can do, figure it out. There's going to be a lot of roads or a lot of days ahead of you where you have really shitty mastering sessions. That's okay. This is definitely something that takes a while to start training your ear to listen to. But yeah, I also do a lot of mixing in my other production video too. So if you want to see more of like how I tackle mixing, just like quick mixing changes with the master in mind, go check it out. Yeah. But anyways, hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you next time.